What if there existed a tower capable of lighting entire cities without the aid of wires? At the beginning of the last century, in a tranquil landscape on Long Island, an immense structure of wood and iron stood out against the sky. It wasn't a lighthouse, nor a monument, but something that seemed to herald a new era. They called it Wardenclyffe Tower, and its creator had a promise to free the world from darkness. Nikola Tesla claimed this tower could transmit energy through the air, as if the Earth itself were a gigantic, invisible wire. Officially, records say it was merely an experimental project, too bold for the technology of its time. The explanation sounds simple, almost commonplace, but it overlooks an essential detail. Tesla believed his invention had no limits. If it had worked, nothing would be the same. Now consider the impact of that. Free, borderless energy could have changed not only homes and cities, but the very balance of power in the world. Perhaps that's why the tower was abandoned and forgotten so quickly. But what the records tell of this experiment is only the beginning of a story full of shadows, and it's at this point that we begin to look at what the official version insists on repeating. Officially, Wardenclyffe Tower was simply a scientific project by Nikola Tesla, a large laboratory accompanied by an immense tower, built in 1901 in Shoreham, New York. The stated objective was simple and straightforward: to test the wireless transmission of electrical energy, something that, at the time, seemed simultaneously magical and impossible. Tesla believed the Earth could function as a gigantic conductor. Using principles of resonance, he planned to send electricity through the air, crossing vast distances. The idea was that everyone could power lamps and machines without the need for wires. A world illuminated by invisible waves, like an electric symphony played across the entire planet. Records from the time indicate that funding came from big names, such as J.P. Morgan, one of the richest men of the early 20th century. He invested in the promise of wireless communication, believing Tesla could send messages and radio signals from one point on the planet to another. But what Tesla had in mind went far beyond what Morgan imagined. The tower, nearly 60 meters tall, looked more like a science fiction weapon than a laboratory. Seen from afar, it had an air of mystery, with its metal dome at the top and a solid base embedded in the ground. Officially, it was just experimental engineering, nothing more than an ambitious project that never fully worked. At least, that's what the books tell. The official story says the project failed because funding was cut and because the science of the time couldn't support such boldness. Tesla was described as a dreamer, someone who imagined more than he could achieve. Thus, the tower was abandoned and forgotten, reduced to a mere chapter in the biography of an eccentric inventor. But when we look deeper, we realize there's something strange about this outcome. Why so much effort in erecting a structure of that magnitude if it was just a simple test? Why invest millions in such an uncertain idea at a time when every penny was being fought over by burgeoning industries? Tesla claimed he wasn't just building a radio transmitter. He said he was creating a global energy system. For him, the entire planet could be connected to an invisible grid, distributing free and unlimited electricity. Something so revolutionary that, if it had succeeded, it would have completely changed the course of humanity. Science at the time couldn't handle such boldness. The very concept of electricity was still new to the public. While cities were still struggling to install poles and cables, Tesla talked about lighting the world from the air. For many, it was delusional. For others, it was a threat to the monopolies already forming. What the official records don't say is how much Tesla's idea bothered the powerful. A world with free energy meant that a lapse of the power companies, which made fortunes from wires, tariffs, and concessions. If the tower worked, who would control this power? Who would have the courage to allow electricity to cease being a business? The official version insists that Tesla failed because he lacked resources. But some question whether a lack of money was truly the cause. Perhaps it was more convenient to say the project was unfeasible than to admit otherwise. The silence surrounding Wardenclyffe seems, in itself, a hint that something larger was hidden. Curiously, the tower is rarely mentioned in school textbooks. Tesla is remembered for inventions like alternating current and the electric coil, but Wardenclyffe is rarely discussed. It's as if this chapter has been erased or overly summarized, leaving only shadows and questions. Why hide such a gigantic dream? The engineering documents describe calculations, measurements, and sketches that never fully reveal what Tesla intended to achieve. He himself spoke in grandiose terms, describing the tower as the beginning of a global network. Words that sounded exaggerated at the time, but today seem frighteningly close to what we know as the Internet. The tower was built at a time when the world was still tethered to telegraph cables. Communications was slow, limited, and expensive. Tesla spoke of sending signals and energy through the earth and the atmosphere, as if he was seeing decades into the future. Officially, they say it was nothing more than wishful thinking, but is it really? The weight of officialdom creates a sense of security. It's easy to believe it was just the frustrated dream of an eccentric scientist. But when we consider Tesla's genius, everything begins to sound different. He had been right before, predicting technologies that would only emerge 100 years later. Why doubt this vision? The official version is recorded in reports, newspapers, and history textbooks, but it leaves out details that change everything, like the strange reports of light streaking across the sky, like the stories of mysterious experiments inside the tower, like the sudden silence of the investors who suddenly cut off their funding. Is it possible to accept that it was all just a failed experiment? Perhaps, but when we consider the size of the structure, Tesla's conviction, and the trail of contradictions, doubt becomes inevitable. It seems that what we're told is just one part of something much larger, carefully hidden. There's a strange irony in all of this. The tower, which was supposed to shine as a symbol of progress, has disappeared almost without a trace. It was dismantled in 1917, in the midst of World War I, as if it were nothing more than scrap metal. A magnificent work reduced to scrap metal without convincing explanations. The tower's destruction was presented as something banal, unimportant, but for many, it felt like a burning of archives. It was easier to erase its existence than to explain what was truly at stake. Thus, Wardenclyffe came to be remembered only in fragments, shrouded in silence and mystery. Even so, some photographs survive. Black and white images show the imposing structure against the skyline, almost like a forbidden monument. It's hard to look at these images without feeling there's something hidden there, something that doesn't fit into traditional history books. Today, when revisiting the official history, we realize it was written cautiously, as if choosing words so as not to reveal too much. Tesla appears as both a genius and a madman, a visionary who dreamed too big. But hasn't this label served to obscure what really happened? It's curious how Tesla's greatest achievements have been appropriated by history, while his most daring projects have been forgotten. Alternating current is in every home. The Tesla coil is remembered as a spectacle, but the Wardenclyffe Tower remains shrouded in obscurity, a secret few dare mention. The official explanation remains the same: there wasn't enough technology or money to sustain the tower. But doesn't it seem strange that such an advanced project was simply abandoned, without further detailed test records or failures? The lack of evidence is, in itself, a puzzle. Tesla claimed the tower could light the world, but reports speak only of failures. The contradiction is glaring. If it didn't work, why did he continue to believe? And if it did, why was no one willing to admit it? This paradox marks the beginning of a journey lost among documents and rumors. What remains for us are fragments, technical records, newspaper articles, incomplete memories, a puzzle in which fundamental pieces seem to have been hidden. The tower is absent from the common narrative, but present in the shadow of doubt. This absence speaks louder than any official explanation. Defenders of the official version urge caution. They say we shouldn't be carried away by myths or exaggerations, that Tesla dreamed more than he could handle, that there's no mystery at all. But the tone of these explanations always sounds defensive, as if there was something to protect. Some see in history's silence a clear sign of censorship. Perhaps they didn't just erase a tower, but an idea too dangerous to survive. An invention capable of freeing humanity from dependence on paid and controlled energy. A threat not to science, but to power. The Wardenclyffe Tower then becomes a border between two narratives. On one side, the official narrative, a technical failure. On the other, an enigma that endures, fueled by silences and contradictions. And, in between, the viewer, faced with a disturbing question: who to believe? What we know today is that Tesla never completely gave up. Even without the tower, he continued to believe in wireless transmission. He continued to speak of a global energy system, even if few wanted to listen. This insistence shows that, for him, the truth lay beyond the official versions. Looking back, we realize that the official version is merely a surface, a veil placed over something deeper, something that may never have been fully revealed. The tower is gone, but the mystery remains. And this mystery still calls to us, almost like an echo coming from within the earth itself. Perhaps this is precisely what intrigues us most, the feeling that we are not facing a closed story, but a closely guarded secret. The official explains, but fails to convince. The simple covers, but does not hide. And it is behind this curtain of normality that the first cracks, the first contradictions, begin to appear. At the end of the 19th century, the world seemed to be taking its first steps into the electric age. City streets were beginning to be lit by incandescent bulbs, and wires crisscrossed the sky like modern spiderwebs. It was the time of the electricity race, when each invention could change the course of humanity. In this scenario, Tesla saw much more than simple cables. In 1893, during the Chicago World's Fair, Tesla stunned crowds by lighting light bulbs wirelessly, simply by bringing them close to their coils. The scene seemed magical, but it was pure science. He had already demonstrated that electricity could travel through the air. This moment was remembered as a glimpse of the future, but for Tesla, it was only the beginning of something much greater. A few years later, in 1898, Tesla unveiled a radio-controlled boat, demonstrating that signals could travel through space without the aid of cables. The audience was divided between admiration and distrust. Many believed there was a trick, but there wasn't. Tesla had already shown the world that wireless communication was possible. In 1901, he secured the support of J.P. Morgan to build his tower. Officially, the goal was to build a powerful radio station capable of sending messages across the Atlantic. But for Tesla, the plan was different: to use the same system to transmit energy on a global scale. It was the boldness of someone who saw the planet as a vast circuit. Construction on the Wardenclyffe Tower began that same year. At nearly 200 feet tall, it was impossible to ignore. Long Island residents watched the structure grow like a sleeping giant. Many didn't understand what was being done, but everyone knew something grand was happening there. Between 1902 and 1903, Tesla conducted secret experiments inside the laboratory attached to the tower. Witness accounts speak of bangs, sparks, and even mysterious flashes that could be seen from afar. Although officially it was just experimental science, there was an aura of mystery surrounding it all. In 1904, the first difficulties began. J.P. Morgan, realizing that Tesla wanted to not just transmit radio signals but distribute free energy, reportedly backed down. The idea of unbound electricity seemed unacceptable to a businessman. Funding was cut, and the project began to sink silently. The tower, however, remained standing. For years it stood as a monument to Tesla's dream, even though he lacked the resources to complete his experiments. Locals called it the strange giant and told stories of metallic sounds coming from within at night. In 1905, Tesla filed patents describing a worldwide wireless power transmission system. The documents were clear. He believed the planet could be connected as a single electrical grid. These records show that his idea was not just a fantasy, but a detailed plan. At the same time, the world saw another figure rise to prominence: Guglielmo Marconi, who sent radio signals across the Atlantic and was credited with inventing radio communication. Tesla accused Marconi of using his patents, but lost the battle for recognition. Thus, while Marconi was celebrated, Tesla saw his work ignored. Between 1906 and 1910, Tesla lived a period of isolation. He continued to believe in his tower, but without financial support, he could not move forward. Scientific publications began to portray him as an eccentric, someone who had lost his way in his own dreams. Wardenclyffe became a symbol of failure, at least in the official narrative. But curious reports persisted. People claimed to see electrical discharges emanating from the tower, like artificial lightning. Others spoke of strange noises coming from underground, where Tesla had installed hidden cables and chambers. These stories were never confirmed, but they continue to fuel the mystery to this day. In 1915, Tesla attempted to revive the project, offering it to the US government as a tool for communication and even defense, but no one listened. World War I demanded practical weapons, not bold dreams. The project was officially abandoned, sinking into oblivion. 2 years later, in 1917, the tower was demolished. It is said that the government ordered its destruction for fear of its use by German spies. Officially, the reason was the sale of the material for scrap to pay Tesla's debts. The image of Wardenclyffe collapsing marked the visible end of a dream, but it didn't erase the questions. From that moment on, the tower physically ceased to exist, but it entered the popular imagination. Only black and white photographs remained, showing its imposing structure against the sky. Each image became a silent enigma, a record of something that could have changed history. Decades passed, and the stories about the tower never disappeared. Some former residents swore they had seen luminous phenomena before its demolition. Others spoke of visits from authorities who seemed more interested in concealing than revealing what was there. In 1943, shortly after Tesla's death, the United States Supreme Court recognized that his patents predated Marconi's. Officially, Tesla was declared the true inventor of radio. This detail reignited the mystery. If he was already right about wireless communication, why doubt wireless energy? Over time, independent researchers began revisiting Tesla's papers. Many claim that the Wardenclyffe notes hide secrets we still don't understand. Others say some of the material mysteriously disappeared, perhaps confiscated by authorities. In the 1960s, Tesla's figure began to be resurrected by scholars and curious onlookers. Wardenclyffe Tower returned to the debate, no longer as a failure, but as an interrupted vision. The question remained, what really happened inside that structure? The tower became associated with bold theories. Some claim Tesla wanted to create a global communications network, foreshadowing the internet. Others believe he came close to mastering still unknown forces of nature. Time has turned Wardenclyffe into a scientific myth. Today, when we look at the timeline, we see something strange. Each official step in history is accompanied by silences and gaps. There are no clear records of the final experiments, nor complete explanations for the tower's destruction. The lack of information is, in itself, revealing. The timeline shows that Tesla didn't give up until the very end. Even when all seemed lost, he continued to speak about his vision of a world connected by free energy. His words were recorded in interviews and speeches, echoing like a warning. Some researchers believe the tower didn't fail, just stopped. That it could have worked, but the world wasn't ready. This hypothesis recurs like a ghost, spanning decades of silence and curiosity. Each milestone seems to reinforce the feeling that Wardenclyffe was more than just a project. It was the beginning of something that could have forever changed humanity's relationship with energy. But that beginning was stifled before it could bear fruit. What remains for us is a sequence of broken dates, like a story half told. From 1901 to 1917, the tower stood, laden with secrets. Then it physically disappeared, but left a presence that has never been forgotten. Even today, visitors come to the site where the tower once stood. Some say they feel a strange energy in the air, as if something invisible still vibrates beneath the ground. These are personal accounts, difficult to prove, but which fuel the mystery surrounding Wardenclyffe. The timeline, when analyzed, seems less like an official history and more like a puzzle. There are pieces that don't fit, dates that don't explain everything, silences that speak volumes. The very disappearance of the original documents heightens the sense of concealment. Time hasn't erased the tower. On the contrary, it's made it a symbol of interrupted innovation, of dreams swallowed by vested interests, of secrets hidden under the guise of failure. Each historical milestone reinforces the question, what was truly silenced? We may never know every detail of this timeline, but one thing is certain. Wardenclyffe Tower wasn't just an abandoned project. It was a promise nipped in the bud, leaving scars that still glow like embers beneath the ashes of history. And it's precisely in these scars that the first cracks in the official version begin to appear. Because when we look closely, we realize that history isn't as linear as it seems. And in the fissures of time, contradictions lurk that change everything. The official story tries to paint the Wardenclyffe Tower as a simple failure. But some details don't add up. If it was simply a miscalculation, why did Tesla continue to insist until his final days that he was on the right track? His confidence seems greater than any explanation for failure. Reports from Long Island residents tell that, on certain nights, the sky would light up above the tower. Bluish flashes cut through the air, as if lightning were being produced from within. If the tower wasn't working, where did these phenomena come from? Newspapers of the time even published reports of strange flashes in the region. Some claimed they could be seen from miles away. These descriptions contradict the version that the tower never operated. If there was light, there was power. Another intriguing point: when Tesla lost funding from J.P. Morgan, he still tried to find other investors. Many reports say that when he presented his idea, potential partners reacted with apprehension, as if they knew the invention might be too powerful to control. The official narrative speaks of a lack of resources, but it doesn't explain why the tower was demolished so quickly. In 1917, the iron was sold for scrap, but some say that before the demolition, government agents had already examined its structures. What were they looking for there? There's also the enigma of the underground. Documents suggest that Tesla built tunnels and chambers beneath the tower, essential for conducting energy to the ground. However, few official records mention this. It's as if the Wardenclyffe underground had been erased from memory. People who visited the site before its demolition spoke of strange machines inside the laboratory, equipment that doesn't appear in later inventories, as if it had disappeared. Where did it go? Was it destroyed or kept secret? One of the biggest contradictions involves the United States government itself. Officially, they showed no interest in the tower. But years later, when Tesla died, federal agents confiscated his documents. Why ignore it during his lifetime and then act as if they were guarding forbidden treasures? Tesla claimed he could transmit energy to any point on the planet. His critics claimed this was impossible. But curiously, many modern technologies, such as wireless communication and the internet itself, were born from concepts he already described. If he was right about so many things, why would he be wrong about Wardenclyffe? The silence surrounding the tower is another glaring contradiction. Tesla's other inventions were celebrated, discussed, and documented, but Wardenclyffe was treated as something uncomfortable, almost shameful. The omission seems intentional, not accidental. Some engineers who studied Tesla's projects assert that, yes, global energy transmission would be possible, albeit complex. This means that current science does not completely refute his ideas, so why call him just a dreamer? Another overlooked detail: the terrain where the tower was built had specific characteristics, handpicked by Tesla. He believed that region possessed natural properties that would help conduct energy. Why was this detail nearly erased from the records? There were also reports of birds falling dead near the tower, as if struck by invisible fields. Little is said about this, but the testimonies reinforce the idea that a force was at work there, something beyond the ordinary. When the tower was demolished, almost nothing of the original material remained. This is strange, since scrap metal is often reused and sold on a large scale. Some researchers believe that parts of the structure were secretly collected, perhaps still preserved today. Tesla even stated in interviews that Wardenclyffe was closer to success than failure. Firm words from someone who didn't seem lost. If it were just delusion, why do so many records confirm its persistence? A 1908 document suggests that Tesla conducted a small-scale, successful energy transmission test. Officially, this never happened, But if such proof actually existed, it could change everything we know. There's also the contradiction of time. If the tower was useless, why did it remain standing for so many years? A structure of that magnitude doesn't stand without a purpose. It served some function, even if not officially recorded. Older Long Islanders told stories of nights when the air seemed to vibrate. Some claimed to feel a metallic hum coming from the tower's direction. These phenomena are difficult to explain, but they don't match the version that it was all just a failed project. The press, which initially talked a lot about Tesla, suddenly began treating him like a madman. The shift was abrupt, almost rehearsed. It's as if there was a concerted effort to discredit everything he said about Wardenclyffe. In private letters, Tesla mentioned that he had discovered more than he was willing to reveal. He hinted that some of his experiments could be dangerous if misused. If he said this, how can we believe it was just fantasy? The fact that J.P. Morgan abandoned the project also raises suspicions. Morgan was a tough but intelligent businessman. If the tower were a hoax, why invest in it initially? The funding cuts seem more like a strategic decision than a technical mistrust. Another contradiction is the chronology of events. Shortly after Wardenclyffe's inception, other wireless technologies began to emerge worldwide, as if someone had secretly exploited Tesla's ideas. Coincidence or appropriation? Some also believe that Tesla conducted interplanetary communication experiments with the tower. Officially, this sounds absurd, but he himself reported picking up strange signals from space. These reports were ridiculed, but today we know that the universe is full of electromagnetic emissions. Some military engineers, decades later, suggested that the tower could have military applications, not only transmitting energy, but also creating waves capable of jamming enemy communications. This detail never appears in the official version. There are reports that Tesla's documents about the tower were locked in safes after his death. Many of them remain inaccessible to this day. If there was nothing special about it, why hide the papers of a scientist's history as called eccentric? Perhaps the most striking contradiction is this: they called Tesla crazy, yet we still use his inventions every day. Alternating current, radio, telecommunications. He was right about almost everything. So why couldn't he have been right about Wardenclyffe Tower, too? The trail of contradictions grows with each closer look. Accounts that don't add up, documents that disappear, explanations that don't convince. All of this creates a picture in which doubt outweighs certainty. It is in this scenario that Wardenclyffe ceases to be just a forgotten monument and becomes an enigma. An enigma that seems purposefully protected by layers of silence. Something they don't want to be remembered. The contradictions aren't just flaws in the official narrative, they are clues. Every hidden detail seems to point to something larger, as if we're faced with a truth that has never been spoken aloud. And when we put all these loose pieces together, an inevitable question arises. If the official version doesn't explain everything, what really happened at Wardenclyffe Tower? It's in this gap between science and secrecy that an even deeper confrontation begins to emerge. Science explains Wardenclyffe Tower as a bold but impossible attempt. According to the books, large-scale wireless power transmission couldn't work because of path losses. It was like trying to fill a leaky bucket. The energy would dissipate before reaching its destination. But Tesla was talking about something different. He didn't just want to shoot electricity into the air. His plan was to use the Earth itself as a conductor, as if the planet were a vast underground cable. The idea seemed absurd to his colleagues, but Tesla believed the world vibrated in electrical synchrony. Traditional science saw this as a pipe dream. The mathematics of the time didn't support such calculations, and engineers called the theory fantasy. But the thing is, Tesla had already proven ideas everyone considered madness, like alternating current, and he won. This clash between science and mystery became a battlefield. On one side, the critics, armed with formulas and certainties. On the other, Tesla, armed only with his vision and the colossal tower he had erected against the sky. It was reason versus imagination, skepticism versus genius. Science said it was impossible to light an entire city wirelessly, but residents swore they saw flashes and heard nighttime hums coming from the tower. For scientists, this was merely the effect of local discharges. For the curious, it was proof that the tower was alive. Today, modern physics confirms that it is possible to transmit energy wirelessly, but over short distances. Our cell phones, inductive chargers, and satellites already do this. Tesla wanted to take the idea to the extreme, expanding it to the size of the planet. What seemed impossible now sounds like just a step beyond. But there is something the calculations cannot explain: Tesla's conviction. He was not a man led by illusions. He saw invisible patterns in the world, as if he had access to some kind of secret map of nature. Perhaps his science was greater than what we know. The line between science and mystery is tenuous. Often, what we call impossible is simply what we don't yet understand. And Wardenclyffe Tower rests precisely on that threshold where numbers seem to fail, but intuition persists. Some scientists today believe Tesla touched on energy concepts we haven't yet grasped. They speak of global resonances, planetary electromagnetic fields, and even forms of energy that escape common laws. Perhaps he saw something science hasn't yet grasped. For skeptics, it's all just exaggeration. They say Tesla confused his own theories, that he believed in something unfounded. But this explanation doesn't erase the reports of strange phenomena, nor Tesla's persistence in defending his vision to the end. Science likes to close doors with calculations, but mystery insists on opening windows with questions. How can we explain the flashes seen from afar? How can we justify the rush to demolish the tower? How can we understand the appropriation of his papers after his death? Perhaps Wardenclyffe is precisely the point where science and mystery meet, creating a field where no explanation is sufficient. Every logical argument finds a narrative that challenges it. Every certainty encounters a shadow. Classical physics says that energy is lost in thin air. But what if Tesla had discovered a way to channel this energy through the Earth? What if he had found a way to make the planet vibrate in tune, like a guitar string that resonates when another is plucked? The mystery grows because, somehow, all of this seems possible. Not in the world we know, but in a parallel world, where the laws of nature still hide secrets. And Tesla seems to inhabit this parallel world, always one step ahead. The clash between science and mystery is not merely theoretical. It carries profound implications. If Tesla were right, the science of the time would have to rewrite its own foundations. And perhaps that's why so many resisted. It wasn't just difficult, it was dangerous for the established order. The tower, then, comes to symbolize this clash. On one side, the calculations that limit what is possible. On the other, the imagination that refuses to accept boundaries. It stands as a monument to the eternal conflict between what we know and what we still don't know. Every time we look at Wardenclyffe, we don't just see iron and wood. We see an idea suspended between two worlds, that of proven science and that of forbidden science. A space where nothing is definitive and everything can be questioned. Official science tries to erase the mystery by calling it delusion. But the mystery continues to throb, like a wound that never heals. It's as if the tower was still standing, reminding us that reality can be much greater than we believe. Perhaps the greatest contradiction is this: current science already flirts with ideas that once seemed impossible. Wireless energy, instantaneous communication, invisible fields. All of this already exists on a small scale. What if Tesla had simply accelerated the future? The mystery isn't just about the tower, but about the very limits of human knowledge. How much can we trust official explanations? How much do calculations truly tell the truth? And when science doesn't explain, isn't the mystery actually an invitation? Some reports suggest that Tesla even tested the tower in operation, albeit partially. If this happened, the official story lies when it says nothing worked. The silence about these tests may be the greatest proof that there was something to hide. The clash between science and mystery then becomes a narrative of power. Who decides what is legitimate science and what is madness? Who has an interest in erasing discoveries that don't fit the system? These questions echo to this day. Tesla said he thought of the world as a living organism, pulsating energy everywhere. Modern science is still in its infancy with this thinking, but each new discovery in quantum physics seems to bring us closer to this vision. Did he simply see it before everyone else? Wardenclyffe didn't die because it was impossible. It died because it was unbearable for those who needed to keep the world under control. This is the feeling that persists, that the mystery lies not only in the tower's operation, but in the silence surrounding it. Science says energy has limits. Mystery says the universe is inexhaustible. Tesla seemed inclined to believe more in mystery than in limitation. This choice made him a visionary and also a target. When we look at the skies, laden with invisible waves that connect us today, it's not hard to imagine that Tesla had glimpsed this long before. He wasn't speaking of delusions, but of a future that had not yet arrived, and that perhaps was deliberately interrupted. The mystery, in this case, is not a fabrication of legends. It lies in the missing documents, in the ignored reports, in the never-explained phenomena. It is a persistent shadow that surrounds the tower to this day, like a fog that won't lift. Perhaps Wardenclyffe Tower was a portal between two worlds, that of known science and that of the science we have not yet dared to explore. A portal that was closed too soon, before humanity could cross it. The confrontation between science and mystery didn't end in 1917 with the fall of the tower. It continues in every discussion about Tesla, in every theory, in every doubt. It's as if time itself refuses to bury this story. And it is in this terrain of uncertainty that the strangest and most forbidden accounts emerge. Testimonies that seem to elude rational explanation. Accounts that perhaps contain clues to what really happened, and that points something even more disturbing. After the collapse of Wardenclyffe Tower, stories began to emerge from people who ventured onto the site. Some were simply curious, others independent researchers. All spoke of the same sensation. The land seemed charged with a strange energy, as if something invisible still vibrated in the air. Former Long Island residents said that even years after the demolition, metallic sounds could still be heard underground, as if forgotten machines continued to operate in the shadows. These reports were never officially confirmed, but were repeated in different voices. Explorers claimed to have found underground passages hidden beneath the tower site. mysterious tunnels and chambers not recorded in official construction records. These accounts suggest that part of the project was buried out of reach of the naked eye. A researcher in the 1930s reported finding corroded metal structures beneath the ground. He described pieces that appeared to be part of a large-scale electrical conduction system. However, shortly thereafter, his notes disappeared. Other accounts speak of guards expelling curious people who tried to approach the site after its demolition. Strange, since officially there was nothing left to protect. If the tower was just scrap metal, why maintain surveillance? There are records of reporters who tried to investigate Wardenclyffe in depth but suddenly gave up. Some say they were pressured into silence, others claim there was nothing there. The contrast between the accounts only adds to the mystery. On certain nights, according to residents, bluish lights could still be seen emerging from the ground of Old Tower, as if residue from experiments still pulsed in the earth. To science, this could be a natural effect, but to those who saw it, it seemed supernatural. Modern explorers, equipped with detection equipment, claim the area still emits unusual electromagnetic field readings. Nothing dangerous, but enough to raise doubts. Could they simply be interference or traces of something larger? In the 1950s, a group of engineers attempted to thoroughly investigate the underground, but reports say they were prevented from continuing without clear explanation. Everything indicates that the site was still considered sensitive even decades after the tower's destruction. Some scholars believe that Tesla hid important notes in secret compartments beneath Wardenclyffe. They have never been found, but the suspicion that they exist keeps the search alive. Perhaps the secrets are still buried there. There are also stories of people claiming to feel unwell when approaching the area. Headaches, dizziness, and a persistent ringing in the ears. Phenomena that don't appear on scientific maps, but are reported by those who have been there. Other visitors describe the opposite, a feeling of euphoria, as if receiving a boost of positive energy. These subjective experiences create an aura of a forbidden place, where everyone seems to experience a different effect. One of the strangest accounts comes from a resident who, in 1920, swore he saw subterranean flashes after heavy storms. He said the tower site glowed as if still connected to some invisible source. Years later, oral history researchers collected testimonies from descendants of these residents. Many held family stories about the tower that never died. For them, Wardenclyffe was not a ruin, but an open wound. Some believe the tower was used in secret military communications tests. These rumors have never been proven, but they grow as documents remain inaccessible. Official silence only fuels the popular imagination. There are also rumors that the area received discreet visits from foreign scientists throughout the 20th century. No one knows what they were seeking there, but their presence was noted by local residents. The land seemed to attract curiosity from all sides. Stories even tell of animals avoiding the site. Dogs barked from afar but didn't cross certain boundaries. For some, this was a coincidence. For others, it was proof that something invisible still worked there. The curious thing is that, despite so many reports, there are almost no official investigations open to the public. All that is known comes from fragments, private notes, and unacknowledged testimonies. It's as if the tower had been wiped off the map. In the 1970s, groups of enthusiasts attempted to recover the site for independent study. But once again, they faced bureaucratic obstacles. The land seemed untouchable, as if protected by invisible forces of history. Some modern explorers claim to have found pieces of rusted metal in the ground, which could have been part of the original structure. However, analyses had never been officially released. Perhaps concrete evidence is being hidden. Reports of strange lights, sounds, and sensations continue to this day. Visitors say the site seems to breathe, as if harboring something dormant. These descriptions reinforce the idea that the tower left more than just memories. Others speak of recurring dreams after visiting the area. Dreams of giant machines, lightning bolts streaking across the sky, and metallic voices in the air. Coincidence? Perhaps. But these are stories that repeat themselves in different eras. Some scholars venture to suggest that Wardenclyffe could have left a kind of energetic scar, an invisible mark that still echoes like the vibration of a once struck string, something unseen but felt. There are records of secret meetings of groups interested in Tesla's legacy. They believe that exploring the area could reveal forgotten technologies, purposefully hidden, a hidden treasure beneath everyone's feet. Others believe that Tesla hid smaller prototypes nearby, hoping that someone in the future might find them. This idea fuels mystery hunters to this day. The tower may be gone, but the stories remain. Every voice, every memory, every fragment of history points to something that official science didn't want or couldn't record. Most strikingly, the more time passes, the more these stories multiply, as if the official silence had the opposite effect, arousing even more curiosity. For those who visit the site, the feeling is clear. Wardenclyffe never ceased to exist. It is present in the earth, in everyone's imagination. A ghost of iron and energy that still haunts the present. These accounts, even without definitive proof, create a mosaic of possibilities. They show that the tower was not just a physical construction, but a symbol of something that perhaps could not be revealed. And when we combine all these testimonies, the impression emerges that Wardenclyffe was more than science, more than a dream. It seems to connect to something larger, something that surpasses common logic, as if it were part of a universal enigma we still don't understand. Wardenclyffe Tower was not just an isolated experiment. When we examine his ideas, we realize they connect to something much larger, almost as if they were pieces of a universal puzzle. Tesla spoke of energy that traversed the planet, but his words recall ancient descriptions of people who also believed in invisible forces that connected everything. Ancient civilizations, such as the Egyptians and Mayans, already erected monuments aligned with the sky. Their pyramids and temples seemed to capture something beyond the sun and stars. Many believe they were structures for channeling energy. Could it be a coincidence that Tesla also built his own tower with the same intention? Some theories suggest that Wardenclyffe was the modern equivalent of the pyramids, a giant antenna connecting heaven and earth, an industrial version of what ancient cultures already sought sacredly, past and future meeting in iron and wood. The idea that the earth is a living organism, pulsating with energy, did not originate with Tesla. Ancient peoples spoke of invisible lines crisscrossing the world lines of force, known today as ley lines. Tesla may have simply given scientific form to ancient knowledge. Some believe that Wardenclyffe tapped directly into these energy lines, as if it were a key to activating something hidden on the planet. The location where it was built was no accident. Tesla spoke of resonance, but perhaps he also spoke of harmony with the very heart of the earth. Some scholars point out that Tesla's measurements strongly resemble concepts used in ancient temples, where architecture served as an amplifier of sounds and vibrations. The tower would, then, be a modern temple, a scientific altar erected to dialogue with the invisible forces of the cosmos. What's most intriguing is thinking about the connections with the future. Wardenclyffe was destroyed in 1917, but the ideas it represented resonate in the present. Satellites, the internet, global communication networks, all that seems like the continuation of a dream Tesla had already outlined. Did he somehow pave the way for others to follow in silence? Many believe his secret notes were used in later projects without credit, as if the tower had spawned invisible seeds spread by anonymous hands. Larger connections also emerge when we consider the universe. Tesla claimed to receive signals from space, sounds and pulses that seemed to come from distant stars. At the time, he was laughed at. Today, we know that the universe is full of waves, signals, and radiation. Once again, he seemed to see before everyone else. If the tower truly captured or transmitted these waves, perhaps it was connected to something beyond Earth. Perhaps it was a link between humanity and the cosmos, a bridge to dimensions we don't yet understand. Some see echoes of occult technologies in Wardenclyffe. Comparisons are made with myths of Atlantis, which spoke of giant crystals capable of emitting energy. Was it just a myth, or a distorted memory of something real that Tesla tried to recreate? In every culture, there are legends about invisible forces that sustain the world, the chi of the Chinese, the prana of the Indians, the mana of the Pacific peoples. Tesla spoke of planetary electricity, but the essence seemed the same, a vital energy that runs through everything. The tower can be seen as the meeting point between modern science and ancient wisdom, a point where technology and spirituality walk side by side, pointing in the same direction, something that transcends eras and civilizations. The connections don't stop in the past. Some associate Wardenclyffe with modern military technologies, such as wave systems that control communications or even the weather. Could the tower be the precursor to invisible weapons? Others believe that Tesla, when speaking of resonance, was describing a universal principle that connects everything, the atom, the planet, the cosmos. A secret rhythm that vibrates in all things. The tower would be merely the instrument to play this symphony. This kind of connection makes us rethink what we call the impossible. Was Wardenclyffe not just an invention, but the revelation of a greater truth? A reminder that we live surrounded by invisible forces we don't yet know how to harness. Some researchers say the tower could have been the beginning of a natural internet, a network not of cables, but of the planet itself, where information and energy would circulate freely. A vision that sounds futuristic even today. These connections transform the tower into something more than concrete and iron. They transform it into a symbol of how human knowledge is greater than the barriers imposed by traditional science or the interests of power. For many, Wardenclyffe is an echo that connects pyramids, temples, satellites, and antennas, as if all these constructions, at different times, sought the same thing, to tap into a universal energy that sustains the very fabric of reality. When we look at a world map, we see that great ancient monuments are aligned with stars and specific points on Earth. Tesla, by choosing Long Island, was perhaps also aligning his tower with something invisible. Nothing is by chance. Some scholars suggest that the tower could have functioned as a planetary antenna, not only sending energy, but also receiving information from Earth and space. A station that connected humans to the cosmos. This idea may sound mystical, but today we know that we live immersed in invisible fields, radio waves, microwaves, gravitational fields. Modern science only confirms that the invisible is everywhere. Tesla seemed to have already been aware of this. The greater connections are not only in space or time, they are also within us. If the tower sought resonance, could it be that our bodies, made of electricity and nerve impulses, are part of this same system? Perhaps Wardenclyffe was not just a machine. Perhaps it was a mirror, a reflection of something that has always been present, but that we cannot yet fully see. A reminder that we are part of a greater whole. When we connect the dots between past and present, we realize that the tower has not died. It has spread through every wireless technology we use, in every antenna, every satellite, every invisible transmission that crosses the sky every day. But the difference is clear. Tesla's dream was free and universal energy without an owner. What we have today is the opposite: controlled networks, paid energy, monitored waves. Tesla's vision seems to have been broken, distorted. This break raises a disturbing question. Was Wardenclyffe destroyed because it revealed a forbidden connection? A connection that showed we are part of something much larger, something that cannot be controlled by a few. Thinking about this, the weight of the tower grows. It was not just a project. It was an attempt to open doors that remain closed. Doors that connect science, nature, and the cosmos in a single flow. What if these doors still exist, waiting to be opened? What if Tesla's larger connections are just the tip of an invisible iceberg, stretching across civilizations and centuries, hidden before our eyes? It is at this point that connections transform into bold hypotheses, theories that defy logic and expand the limits of imagination. For when science falls silent and mystery expands, ideas are born that seem impossible, but which may hold the key to everything. What if the Wardenclyffe Tower had actually worked? This question echoes like thunder because it paves the way for hypotheses that seem like fiction, but carry the weight of possibility. Tesla claimed he could send energy to any point on the planet. If this were true, we would live in a completely different world. One of the strongest hypotheses is that of free energy, a global system in which no one would pay for electricity. Light in every home, machines working everywhere, without wires and without borders. But for the great monopolies of the time, this would be a nightmare, not a dream. Some believe Tesla came close to creating a planetary transmitter, not just for electricity, but for information. A kind of primitive internet, capable of connecting continents even before the invention of modern radio. A natural network, accessible to all. Another bold theory suggests that the tower could manipulate the weather. Tesla spoke of controlling waves and frequencies that traversed the atmosphere. If true, he could trigger storms, dissipate clouds, even influence entire crops. Some even suggest that Wardenclyffe could be used as a weapon, a device capable of generating discharges so powerful they would destroy targets miles away. An invisible, silent, and nearly unstoppable weapon. Some scholars believe that Tesla wasn't just talking about electricity, but about a deeper force, a cosmic energy that permeates everything. The tower would be the instrument to access this inexhaustible source, a key to something beyond what we call science. There's also the hypothesis that Tesla discovered forms of interplanetary communication. He himself reported receiving signals from space. Ridiculed at the time, Today, we know that the universe is full of mysterious emissions. Perhaps he picked up what he shouldn't have. Some go even further and associate Wardenclyffe with extraterrestrial contacts. The idea is that Tesla created a giant antenna capable of communicating with distant civilizations. An unlikely hypothesis, but one that gains traction due to the silence surrounding the project. Others claim the tower could access hidden dimensions, a vibrational portal created by the attunement between Earth and the cosmos. This vision blends science and spirituality, but echoes Tesla's words, who spoke of forces that could not be seen, only felt. A disturbing hypothesis is that Tesla was silenced because his discoveries threatened the world order. Free energy, free communication, climate control. This would mean taking power over all from the hands of a few. Some conspiracy theorists believe that parts of Wardenclyffe's technology was secretly absorbed by military projects throughout the 20th century. As if Tesla's secrets never disappeared, merely changed hands. Others see the tower as an attempt to recreate something that once existed. The pyramids, the ziggurats, the monuments aligned with stars. Perhaps Tesla was recovering in a modern way, lost ancient knowledge. One of the boldest theories suggests that Tesla understood energy as information. For him, everything vibrated at frequencies. If this were true, the tower could not only illuminate cities, but also carry messages, memories, even thoughts. This hypothesis leads to even more disturbing territory. What if Wardenclyffe could influence the human mind? Electromagnetic waves on a global scale, stirring not only machines, but brains. A frightening idea, but plausible within Tesla's universe. Some researchers believe Tesla was on the verge of unifying science and spirituality. He spoke of the universe as music, each part vibrating in harmony. The tower would be the instrument to play this symphony. Perhaps it was more than a machine, it was an altar. Others see Wardenclyffe as the prototype of an advanced civilization that never was. Had it worked, perhaps we wouldn't exist today in a world of oil wars, energy crises, and inequality. The planet would have taken a different path. Some say the tower's destruction wasn't just a practical decision, but a symbolic act, a silent message. Certain discoveries cannot reach the people. Wardenclyffe fell not because of a technical failure, but because of fear of what it represented. These hypotheses are inconclusive. They tread between logic and mystery, between the possible and the unthinkable. But they all have something in common: the sense that Tesla was far ahead of his time, tapping into forces we still don't understand. When we combine all these ideas, a captivating image emerges, that of a tower that could have changed the fate of the world, but was extinguished before revealing its true potential. A flame that burned too brightly and was suffocated. And it is at this point that the tension reaches another level. For if the hypotheses are so bold, the climax lies not only in what Tesla created, but in what was hidden from him. And when all the pieces seem to fit together, the feeling arises that something gigantic has always been lurking, waiting to be revealed. The tower wasn't just iron and wood, it was like a heart beating on the horizon, a creature made of gears and dreams. When the first tests began, the air seemed to awaken. The ground vibrated, and the silence of the night was cut by a deep, almost hypnotic hum. Suddenly, the sky split with flashes. These weren't ordinary bolts of lightning, but sparks that seemed to spring from the planet itself, rising to touch the metal dome. It was as if the Earth were giving something back, answering Tesla's call. Reports speak of lamps turning on by themselves in distant houses, of compasses going haywire, of people feeling the air grow heavier. All of this was described as if the tower had opened a new window on reality. Tesla observed everything with feverish eyes. He didn't just see lights, he saw confirmation of his vision. For him, it was proof that the entire planet could be connected as a single living machine. And for an instant, the impossible seemed within reach, but that moment brought fear. Those watching couldn't tell if they were witnessing a miracle or a disaster waiting to happen. The air seemed charged with something untamable, energy that liberated but also frightened. Some swore they heard strange sounds like metallic voices echoing in the air. Others felt dizzy, as if they were in an invisible storm. Wardenclyffe wasn't just an experiment. It was a superhuman experience. It was there that the paradox was born, an invention capable of illuminating the world, but also challenging everything we knew. Dream and nightmare combined, united in the same blue spark that cuts through the sky. The tower, in that moment, ceased to be just a building. It became a symbol of freedom, but also of threat, a symbol of an open yet feared future. Those who saw it never forgot it. The descriptions are repeated like scars, sudden flashes of light. Machines failing, animals restless, people looking up in astonishment and fear. It was impossible not to sense that something enormous was happening. Tesla believed he had reached the key that would unlock the world, but at the same time, he knew he was playing with forces beyond control. It was like playing with bottled thunder. One slip and all would be lost. It was at this apex moment that power began to move against him. What for Tesla was victory, for the powerful was a threat. Ownerless energy, barrier-free communication, priceless freedom, a tower against entire empires. Official science called it madness. But what is more frightening, believing Tesla was delusional, or accepting that he was right and had been silenced. This is the crossroads at which Wardenclyffe finds itself to this day. The climax was not just a spark in the sky, but the collision of two forces, one man's vision and a system's fear. On one side, the future, on the other, control. And between them, a tower that pulsed like a waking giant. Some say Tesla touched the edge of reality, going beyond what he should have. That at that moment, it was no longer about electricity, but something beyond human understanding. A bridge to the unknown. Wardenclyffe didn't fail. It was interrupted. The true climax lies not in what we saw, but in what was hidden. A victory that was extinguished before it could be made public. A flame that burned too high and was suffocated. The impact of that moment echoes to this day. There is no complete record, no definitive proof. Only fragments, rumors, and a heavy silence that seems to scream louder than any document. It's as if the tower left a scar on time itself. An invisible mark that continues to pulse, reminding us that something happened there, something history refuses to tell. The climax of Wardenclyffe is not the end of an experiment, but the beginning of a secret that still looms over us, like a storm cloud that never released its storm. Revisiting these scenes, we feel not just curiosity, we feel vertigo. It's like being in front of a half-open door from which a forbidden light escapes. A glimpse of what we could have been, but never was. And perhaps this is exactly where the real concern lies. What Tesla saw that night, what he made the tower reveal, may have been too big to fit into the story. And with each flash he took from the sky, the shadow of what was yet to come grew. Wardenclyffe Tower fell more than a century ago, but its shadow remains in the memory of humanity. She wasn't just demolished iron, she was a dream interrupted. A reminder that the future may always be one step away, but sometimes that step is denied. Tesla believed that energy was everywhere, free as the air we breathe. If he had succeeded, perhaps we would live on a planet without electricity bills, without cables, without borders. A world where electricity was as natural as wind. But that world never arrived. In its place there was silence. What remains is the mystery of a tower destroyed too soon, and of a man who died alone, but carrying with him secrets that may never be revealed. Today, when we use our wireless devices, when we talk to someone on the other side of the planet in seconds, it is impossible not to think, is all this just a distant reflection of what Tesla had already dreamed of? Perhaps the Wardenclyffe is more than a forgotten experiment. Maybe it's a symbol, a warning, a portal that never opens. A reminder that science and mystery go hand in hand, and that the line between them is thinner than we imagine. What do you think? Was Tesla's tower just an impossible dream, or a discovery so dangerous that it had to be erased from history? That's the question that still echoes like thunder. We may never know the truth. Perhaps the answer is buried in the soil of Long Island, or lost in secret documents locked in safes. Or maybe it's within us, in the way we choose to see what we call impossible. Wardenclyffe invites us to reflect. How far are we willing to go to challenge the unknown? How far can we tolerate the freedom that certain discoveries bring? The mystery is not just in the tower, but in our own ability to accept infinity. Tesla left us more than inventions. He left us with questions, and questions have more power than answers because they continue to haunt us. What if? How? Why? They are the ones who keep the fire of mystery burning. And now, I ask you, what do you believe really happened in Wardenclyffe Tower? Leave your opinion in the comments, share your theories. Your vision may be the missing piece in this enigma that spans time.